I'll tell you a story. So when I was a director of supply chain in Halliburton over Eurasia,
Mm.
the head of anti-corruption in Halliburton. So this guy was formerly head of the anti-drug department and Houston police force and racketeering before that. So
Mhm.
he's running all this working to bust up corruption in Eurasia. As he's put it, by
Yep.
the way, he's like, the Halliburton leadership was, why is Eurasia so corrupt? It's like, because you don't let me work in Europe and the US. He finally got
I'll
fired
find
when
too
he
many things.
yeah. Well, he finally got fired because he came down and just publicly stated that the entire leadership, upper lead management, senior management in Halliburton, needs to be given lie detector tests because they're so damn corrupt. So that was
Oh
the
my
final
God.
straw. But I mean, he's right. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I'm sitting there drinking a beer with him. This is 2014, and he's telling me about that his son was working in procurement for the NSA. And the
Mm.
NSA, again, this is 2014. So the NSA was building a giant underground server farm in Nevada, and they had bought a terabyte server. Again, this is 2014, a terabyte server per citizen of the United States. So your
Holy
electronic
cow.
mail, your anything that's going through the ether, right,
Yeah,
was coming.
350 million terabytes.
Well,
Holy
back then it
cow.
was less. It was it was about
Uh,
290, something like that.
Yes.
But I mean, this is
Right.
15. No, it was
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. 300, let's say
maybe
300 million,
yeah, maybe
rounded off,
300
right?
at that
300
point.
million.
But either
Good
way.
God, man. Yeah.
But the thing is they didn't have the ability to crunch the information yet, but they were already collecting it. And now you've got the AI that can crunch it and can build that web of, okay, Vince is calling whom? He's calling Stas, he's calling John, he's calling Bibi Netanyahu. How often is he talking to Bibi Netanyahu? You know, not that often, but he's talking to Stas a lot. And John, he's doing a lot with John. And let's see who's John's connections. And you start building
Yeah,
out
exactly.
this
Text
microcosm
matrix.
matrix,
Yeah.
and let's arrest John, but we can get, okay, Vince has been talking to him a lot. We'll get him too, and all these other
Right.
people. And you instantly come up with this whole list of all these people's connections. And you need to pick up John and you get the next 20 people around him.
Right.
So, and that's here. I mean, that's already here.
Yeah. That's it. That's exactly where it's headed. It's going to be based upon these threat matrices. And the thing is like government always needs something to do, especially in the West. The West is about narratives. Why is it about narratives? Because it really doesn't have any history. The concept of Western civilization, the more I looked at its stars, I realized it's a joke. It's fake. It doesn't exist. Never happened, right? When you and I were in high school, you know, our professors and our teachers always taught us that there's some sort of a magical plumb line, right? A magical
Yeah.
plumb line and some sort of cohesive um, thread from Plato all the way to NATO.
Yep.
There's a cohesive thread called Western civilization. But then you realize that Western civilization was nothing but a band of crooks that were killing each other on one continent with so much bloodshed they eventually had two world wars and then a cold war right after, and now they still can't get along, right?
Yep.
So this is what Western civilization is. It's a fucking joke, right? So what's going to occur, man? It's like they're going to have all this data. And they're not only going to be spying on you and me, but they're going to be spying and blackmailing each other. There will be it's going to be Game of Thrones and a really bad Bond movie all mixed together. And a lot of backstabbing, nothing will get done, and political corruption through the roof. We're going to have so much corruption, we'll probably make Romania blush. Okay, that's
Well,
or we'll make
wait,
Ukraine
I was gonna
blush.
say, well, look, there's
Ukraine,
Ukraine.
yeah, that's right. Ukraine is the most corrupt country in the world. Excuse me. That's right. That's right. I'm looking at old data here. But yeah, I think yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to be a hub of a lot of things between apart from the three industries I talked about. The other thing will be organ trafficking, human trafficking, child kidnapping. That's going to proliferate. In some areas, there's going to be a lot of no-go zones in the United States. There's going to be certain cities you won't be able to go to.
You mean
Because it's too
Detroit?
dangerous. Yeah, Detroit, New
Yeah.
York City, Chicago, Miami, LA, Houston, Dallas. I mean, it's gonna be some crazy times, man.
I got a challenge for you.
Yeah,
Look up top 40 most dangerous cities in the world. First, I'll give you a hint. Only one of them is not in the Western Hemisphere. That would be Johannesburg.
yeah.
And in the top 40, um, actually, it was a top 20 that I looked at. Top 40's got even more. But in the top 20, two of those cities are in the U.S.
Correct. Wow.
Top 40, I think you get up to four or five cities in the U.S.
Yeah. Wow.
Most
Well, it
dangerous
just goes to
cities in
show
the
you, man.
world.
And then yeah, and that's Western civilization. Then people who hear what I have to say, that's not true. That's because we have migrants and people that don't share our values. Who brought those people in? It's your leadership because your leadership has always been exploiting you. That's what
Yep.
the West doesn't realize.
Oh,
And
yeah.
people always ask me all the time. See, there was a time where I was like, you know what? We're Americans and we need to band together. At best, we need to, we'll balkanize. At worst, there'll be a civil war, but the republic will live on. That was my ideal. And then I woke up to the fact that nobody's going to come and save us. Then I woke up to the fact that drone warfare has changed the game styles. I realized that me and my cohort of misfits who are playing leapfrog in the woods, brandishing weapons because we're part of some resistance militia, could be taken out by drones very quickly and rapidly. We could be rapidly liquidated, turned to hamburger meat, right? Turned to fertilizer. And then all of a sudden, I started realizing with the real power players and the private equity that is so corrupt, they're not good at anything but stealing and
Oh, yeah.
killing. That's the only thing. Those two things are American leadership and American industry and American government is good at. Two things: stealing and killing. And they can't steal and kill overseas anymore. So the empire, as it rescinds, will begin to steal and kill here domestically. So when Westerners understand, people are like, "Oh, we're in a managed decline. What do? We need to bring back." Look, the concept of country and nations and culture doesn't exist in the West. There's no real harboring of that because why? There's no real civilization. The future of the West and the future of the United States is this: we are an economic zone, and the faster Americans understand that's where we are being shepherded to, the more they can stand to benefit by taking advantage of the economic industries that can emerge in an environment like that in order for them to prosper. But this whole take back the republic, we're going to fight it out, and it's going to be like, have you seen the average American? Not only can the half the population read, the majority of the population is fat and obese. Okay,
True.
nobody's putting on a 50
True.
pound rucksack and huffing it through the woods. It's not SEAL Team 6 I'm worried about, Stars. It's Meal Team 6. Okay, Meal Team, MEAL 6. They got to have 6 meals, maybe 7 or 8 meals a day. That's the average American.
There was
Accountants.
there was a good little survival video I was watching one day. They were talking about, and they hit it on the spots. Like, worst case scenario, everything goes to shit. Packing it up and going into the woods is not the plan. Why? Because there's a million other
No.
idiots that are going to go right into the same woods. There's limited resources in any forest. I mean, there's only so many animals running around.
Correct.
You're going to get hungry. Everybody's going to be trying to
You're
hunt
going to
down
die.
everything that moves. They're going to strip the forest
That,
instantly. No
yeah.
forest is
That's
meant
why
to.
my strategy of shooting my neighbors and drinking pool water works.
No forest could handle a million alpha predators running around with rifles, just taking every damn bird and
They'll eat each other.
frog down.
Have you seen the white settlement a group? This was a group that was tired. They wanted to win back the republic, and they said, "You know what? We're going to have a white settling land." And I said, "More power to you guys. That's awesome. That's great. I'm happy for you because there's so many ethnic enclaves all throughout America and whatnot. Fine." So these white guys decided to start a community, styles, and I'm thinking that, you know what? It's been about 10 months now. They probably have Wi-Fi and nuclear fusion figured out by now. And let's go take a look. Let's go take a look at the settlement. Literally, it's out in the woods somewhere in Arkansas. Nothing's really built. They're all living in pretty much mud huts, and they're chasing chickens in the forest. That's what's going on.
Wait,
Okay, and I'm like, What? And this is the guy that was on so many podcasts. I forgot the community that he was going to call. I think it was, I called it Outer Whitelandia. I don't know what the community was called,
Right,
but I'm
land.
thinking this guy's
I
so
think that's east of
articulate.
Arkansas
He's got a
City,
something.
Little
Yeah,
Rock,
yeah, yeah.
Arkansas.
So, so he's got this plaid shirt on. I'm like looking at this guy. He's talking so good, Stars. I'm like, yes, a country boy can survive. He's a country boy. He'll survive, Stars. Fast forward 10 months. He is in the woods chasing chickens. They have no running water. They don't have electricity. They still got to drive 5 hours to a local grocery store. They're on. I'm like, this is the idea. And this is the problem because not only I've never, and I've, Saz, you know this because you're outside of the country now. There's nobody that's more brainwashed and given over to Hollywood propaganda than Americans. I'm gonna go
No,
in the
no, no. There is,
woods.
there is,
I'm gonna be Rambo.
there is Russian liberals.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because they think they believe in the bullshit that the Americans believe. So they think, oh my God, their bullshit is fantastic. It must be true. It must be true, right? They're
Absolutely.
crazy.
You can't get it through their heads. People
And
don't live like
but
it. No, they do. They
here's
do.
the funny.
I saw
No,
it on
yeah, because
television.
you know what? They don't live. Oh yeah, they don't live here. That's the problem. We do more. I told you, poverty, entertainment. There's that entertainment again, right?
Yep, yep.
So a lot of these guys are like, it's gonna be Rambo First Blood. I'm gonna go into the woods. I'm gonna stay in the woods. I'll survive. Bro, these guys will be dead in no time because they think they saw Survivor, man. They saw Survivor Island. They thought, oh, they saw the movie, the television series Alone. That they could survive out there. You don't realize you could be in a field filled with rabbits and you'll die of starvation. Remember the rabbit starvation that people went in
Oh
the
yeah,
woods
yeah.
in Alaska? They ate nothing but rabbits. They were like dead almost because they couldn't get the vital nutrients that rabbits don't have. You know, and
Oh
like
yeah,
you
yeah.
said, there's not that much resources to prey. You know,
Well,
and if you're vegan, forget it. You're screwed.
well, first of all, humans, by the way, need fat, animal fat, a lot more than they need animal
Absolutely,
meat. Just so you know,
exactly correct.
that's why we have sala. Sala. Sala, for
Yeah.
those people who don't know it, it's cured fat back from pigs. And
Yep.
it's the best. It's so vitamin packed. I mean,
It is.
middle of winter, you eat it
Yep.
and you're full of energy, right? It's
Yep.
got vitamin D, it's got vitamins, it's got everything you need, right?
Yep.
Rabbits don't have that. Rabbits are like good
No.
for stew plus a little, potatoes in there and
Yeah.
some,
Exactly.
things.
Exactly. Super lean. Super
Yeah.
lean meat.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have much better. And the reason for that, most people don't realize this. There's an organ in our bodies that, especially when it's being used a lot, can burn up to 600 calories in a
Yeah.
couple of hours, and that's the brain.
Yep.
Exactly.
And by
That's
the
the
way,
brain.
it used to be the standard numbers for cholesterol was 300 to 350.
Yeah.
Now it's
Now
like
it's like down to like
180.
180. Now
Yeah.
it's like 120. They're lowering you more. That's why,
That makes
Stas,
people
thanks to the
stupid.
it does. It makes you stupid because your brain is 100% cholesterol.
Yeah.
And also the fact is that now we have a whole litany of people that are dropping dead from heart attacks but with low cholesterol levels.
Well,
Oh,
look,
it's lovely.
consider the Heart Association, which, by the way, in Russia, in China, a lot of these other countries, the local medical boards were listening to them and following their
Yeah.
leads. And
Yeah,
after
because it's the West.
40,
They know. It's America.
yeah,
It's Hollywood.
it
Hollywood,
is,
you
it
know?
is. And after 40 years, the Heart Association went, whoops, we're
We were
sorry,
wrong.
we were wrong. Apparently, considering human beings are carnivores, first and
Yeah.
foremost, we have a one-chamber
Right.
stomach, by the way. We cannot friggin'
Right.
normally process vegetable matter. Even
No.
chimpanzees have a two-chambered stomach.
Exactly.
We can live strictly off of meat, but apparently,
Strictly off the meat.
unbelievably, a carnivore can process the fat. But when you start
Yeah.
pouring in that, every rapeseed oil and all the other the technical, equipment oil that they pour into food these days,
Yeah.
that drops you dead. Whoops, sorry
Yeah.
for 40 years of bullshit you and
Yeah.
skyrocketing heart
Right.
attack rates. Sorry.
Exactly. But that's the stupor, that's the glamour, that's the witchcraft, that's the delusion. The world fell under America's spell. It fell under America's spell because of Hollywood, because of we're the greatest economy in the world. We're the largest, most powerful military ever in human history. And I'm like, we're blind, broke, impoverished, and naked. Like that's the reality of it. our entire economy is held together by electronic duct tape. That is what holds the economy together is electronic duct tape. And when that duct tape is gone, there's going to be such a shock and awakening for a lot of people. By then, it'll be too late, Stas. And that's what I fear. Either that or before that happens, they'll try to kick off a major war so they can blame the collapse. And that's what it is. They're looking to blame the collapse because these guys are not, these are not diplomats. They're not solutions oriented people. These are stupid theater kids who are playing Dungeons and Dragons. They're LARPing, Stas. They're live action role playing. They're LARPing these roles and positions they have. So, according to the Washington, D.C., and the American think tanks and the American elites, who are all idiots, they're all stupid people, right? And you can see by their kids who are just dumb, and you can see by the universities of the quality we put out here. And I'm talking about the Ivy League, they're all idiots. Because we're given to a narrative, what does a narrative need? It needs some sort of blame. It can't be, you know what, we screwed up, let's just pedal back. No, 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 no. It doesn't work for the narrative. In the narrative is we set off a global conflagration, maybe a World War III, and then we blame the reason for the reason why, boys and girls, our economy collapsed, and you could only have ramen and tuna fish is because we went to war with the Chinese and the Russians. We got our asses kicked. It's really their fault. We were just trying to help Israel, and we were trying to fight the forces of evil because we're GI Joe. That's the narrative in
Hey,
a nutshell.
I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of my friends did. But,
Great game,
but it is, from back in. By the
and
way,
nobody,
have you
and very
seen what
few
the
people play
community?
it today.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no, there's a huge community to play it,
No, there is, there is, there
they're
is.
all woke.
Oh
It's
God!
been
Don't tell
taken
me Wizards
over.
of the Coast went woke.
It all went woke. I just out of
Oh
curiosity, I
God!
haven't played in I don't know how many years, but
And yes, they got some transgender elf who's.
oh my God, it is the epicenter of woke.
Oh man, forget it.
All the
Oh, there
crazies
goes
of
that.
yeah, that you start. I
Now I
started
heard they're
reading
trying
just
to.
out of
They,
curiosity. A video popped up on YouTube. It was like, wait a minute, it can't be that bad. So I started going in and reading. It's
yeah,
like, holy crap! Yeah, they killed it.
that's nuts, man.
They've
That's
killed it
nuts.
totally.
I heard also. I heard also they're trying to infiltrate Warhammer 40,000, which is like the last bastion
Oh, they
of
already did.
masculinity left in terms of table. They did. Oh, it's God.
They already did. They
What's
already
left,
did.
Stas? What's left? I was talking to
Well, the
my
Boy
buddy Tim
Scouts are now
Kirby, who's out in
the
Russia.
scouting people, and the Girl Scouts are suing the former Boy Scouts because they took away the girls from the feminazi
Oh
Girl
my
Scouts.
God. Oh my
You,
God.
you can't
We're the
make this shit
scouting
up,
people
man.
here. I'm joining the scouting people.
My wife before I got into media and doing all of this, my wife was kept asking, us like, look, we've left the U.S. Why do you keep watching American news and all that? It's like, my dear, it's the comedy factor.
It is.
It's the
It
comedy
is.
factor.
It no, it truly is. It's pure insanity, and that's what people and the people that live here they don't understand that. They think everything is they have this normalcy bias, which is very dangerous,
Oh
right? It's a
yeah.
very dangerous normalcy bias because they think everything will continue the way it was and there will be no problems. But the problems are here, and the problems are starting to mount, and we're reaching a breaking point. That's what people don't get over here. Oh V, what does it look like? It looks bad, man. It looks real bad.
Have you ever watched Mad Max, the first Mad Max?
Yeah,
What you notice in Mad Max is the society ended, but there was no nuclear war, there was no massive, comet hitting the ground. And what you see in Mad Max, the first one, is a collapse of civilization, but
yeah,
it's a slow collapse. People are still going to work because that's the only thing they know how to do. But the
correct.
control is falling and everybody's giving less and less of a damn. And it's all slipping away, but people are
Yeah,
still trying to act like it's all normal because, they've always been normal. Like the Soviet Union, by the way, in the 90s. I mean, a lot of people, like a couple of my aunts, they were teachers. They went to school every day. They taught. They didn't get paid for like 5 years at a time.
yeah,
And I asked one of them, it's like, why'd you keep going? It's like, well, what else am I gonna do?
right. Exactly, exactly. And I think that's gonna same thing's gonna happen here. I think I give an example in regards to the political inflexibility to adjust to reality in the United States. And that example I said, if if the oceans of the world were to dry up tomorrow, the United States will still be building submarines
Yeah.
because that's just what we do.
In 40 or 50 different states.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And they'll have a bucket brigade pouring water on it, going around the block. Because that's just what we do. And this is the inflexibility of American thinking. There's no strategic capability. And this is why Sergei Lavrov said America is agreement non-capable. Because there's no this is not we're not dealing with people that are strategically minded. You might get a few here and there, but the overall arching is once they start something in motion, it
Yep.
always crescendos unto its final conclusion. And that's what we're witnessing here in Iran, in the situation in Ukraine. It's this is going to run its course. Whether this expands into a large scale regional war, which it's starting to do, but there's going to be a conclusion to all of this, and it's not going to end well for the United States. The two oceans are not going to save the U.S. this time.
All right.
And I'm not talking about like a nuclear strike here or somebody hitting us here. I'm just talking about the simple fact that this will economically break us. The markets are too fragile. They cannot take any sort of shock like this. Reality is kryptonite for the American stock market. Reality is kryptonite. They live in fantasy world. Stas, let me tell you this, man. People always say to me, people who haven't been around billionaires will always say to me, well, if you know this, V, don't you think the billionaires know? And I laugh because I've been around billionaires. And the funny thing is, they don't know.
Yeah.
Because why don't the American know? Because the American billionaires are not captains of industry, Stas. It's
No.
not like in the 1900s where we have Andrew Carnegie. And what was he good at? Railroads and steel,
Oh,
right?
and putting
He
a
knew
library in
metallurgy. Yes,
every town and village in America.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. We don't have captains of industry anymore. We don't have people who build anymore. We have paper manipulators. We have guys who know how to short their own stock. We have
Yeah.
guys who know how to do margin calls and stock buybacks. These are paper billionaires. They're not real billionaires. So their level of global understanding is tied to what they do best. And what they do best is hinged on fantasy. Fantasy that's interconnected to a stock on an exchange that is being traded. That's the level of their knowledge. So,
Well,
no, the American billionaire doesn't know. Why? Because I've asked a few of them the questions. They're astounded. Holy shit, how do you know that? And I'm like, God help us. God help us.
let me ask you this. We're almost out of time this time around.
Okay.
But so one quick question. And you should really know this considering your positions on gold. So, you normally hear things from people buy physical gold in the US, keep it in the banks. Well, we had this, having sex a second time is a hell of a lot easier than having sex the first time.
Right.
And we had 1932. The America
Gold
had
confiscation.
sex with gold. When the G-man was in every bank
Yeah.
confiscating your gold, giving you
Yeah.
paper, and bugger off. So, what's the point of keeping gold in the U.S.?
You can't. It's the dumbest thing in the world. If unless you are very creative and you're able to hide gold in an undisclosed area in your property or somewhere else, and you bury it like your name is Captain Hook,
But
you
you can't
bury
use
it
it.
somewhere. Yeah, you can't use it. The smartest the only system that works for Americans is this. You have to work on what is known as the LBMA, London Bullion Market Association Good Delivery Network, right? And that network, it's just the system. I forget the name of it. Forget the whole attachment to the City of London Corp. The hell with that nonsense. But you have the LBMA, you have the SBMA, which is the Singapore Bullion Market Association as well. And what it is a tight ringed network of vaults and jurisdictional, vaults and bullion banks in high security jurisdictions that have the highest bank secrecy. Switzerland is not bad. It's not my favorite. Hong Kong, Singapore, these two are phenomenal jurisdictions where you can hold your gold, either under your name or your trust name or whatever. And then that gold is held there. It's insured by a major insurer against any sort of loss, theft, destruction, World War III, nuclear strike, tsunami, whatever. And then it's highly liquid. It's monetary grade gold. It's not like these gold selling jokers here in the United States where they're like, buy our 1 ounce American Eagle numismatic 19 whatever, right? No, this is like high quality monetary grade gold, the type of gold that central banks and sovereign wealth funds and hedge funds buy. It's highly liquid. So if shit hits the fan, you need to have money wired into a bank account anywhere in the world. It can be done rapidly in less than 24 hours into any bank account in the world globally. Or if you want to move laterally and say, hey, you know what? I have $1 million in gold with you. Take $100,000 of it, put it into Bitcoin, put it into whatever stable coin in this XYZ country. They could do it. And here's the wallet address. That's how you want to move. That's how the wealthy move. And that's the kind of system that I've been, working in for the last 15 years. That's it. That's the only real thing. It's vaults. It's the refiners in Switzerland. It's the vaults in Switzerland and in Singapore and Hong Kong and the massive amounts of real gold that's there, as opposed to the BS that's in Fort Knox, which I guarantee you is probably gold dipped tungsten bars.
And one last thing on that point. What about
Yeah.
paper? Because a lot of people sell paper on gold. I think it's
No,
absolute bullshit.
it's
Uh,
bullshit, man. If
okay.
you're a trader and you could make money on the trade and trading the paper, then trade the paper, but take your profits and roll it into physical. Like
Yeah.
there are so many guys that that are part of some trading schools and stuff that I'm affiliated with, um, uh, where we always teach people. There's a school called AlgoFactory.tech. I'm one of the partners in it, but we teach people to build the algorithm so you can have a life, you could trade it, but take your profits, man, put it into real stuff. Buy gold, hold it, either hide it somewhere safe, store it overseas, in a highly regulated, highly secured bank or vault or whatever, or um, you know, buy like arrogable land somewhere, set up a secondary citizenship, do something. But in terms of like sitting on your rear end and thinking everything's fine, because Stas, Trump is playing 3D chess. I don't know if you knew that.
Wait a minute. I thought he was playing 8D chess.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get the memo. That was the latest upgrade. He's upgraded. He got an update on his operating system. It's 8D chess now, Stas.
What
8D.
you're seeing is not Trump. You're seeing the projection of the multi-dimensional entity of Trump
Ooh.
into our dimension.
Right. He's the God
That's all you're
Emperor.
seeing. Yeah, the God
He's
Emperor
the
of
God
humanity,
Emperor.
of
That's
mankind.
He's the God Emperor, and he knows. And there's a secret agreement between Trump and Xi and Putin. They're killing the deep state, man. That's what they're doing. And then where we won, where we all, where we what are the Q not Q idiots will always say? Where we go one, we go all, something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's all trust the plan, you know. Dear God, dear God. Yeah, there's a
I
plan, folks, and it's not going to benefit you.
the plan is calling putting shorts on the market for announcing that, hey, oil's going down. It's all peace before
That's
the
it.
Iranians have a chance to go, hey, we never actually talked to you. What the hell are you talking about?
Hey, Stars, I mean, the guy did make $2.4 billion in about a year and a half, in less than a year and a half, man. $2.4 billion
What he
shorting the
made
market. It's
Wait a
incredible.
minute, wait. He made 30 billion off of his coin, his and Milani's coin.
Oh, that's right. I didn't count the two together.
Yeah,
Right, there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. Have you seen the market value of that coin from peak? It's
Oh,
down
yeah, yeah.
90, it's down over 97%.
Right. So if you're like one of those magatards who put $10,000 of your hard-earned savings into Trump coin, you'd have $5 with you today. Today
Yeah.
you'd have $5 in your pocket. Trust the plan, folks.
I mean,
Trust the plan.
if it was you or I, you'd have the Fed on your throat, on your head for a
I'd be in
pump and
jail.
dump. This would be a
Yeah.
typical pump and dump, right?
Yeah.
But it's the president doing a pump and dump, and his
Yeah.
wife doing a
Yeah.
pump and dump. It
Yeah.
just, God,
But
uh,
trust Trump. He has a plan. He's a genius.
yeah.
He's a stable genius, Does.
He can't remember what he said 5 minutes ago. He's
No.
countering himself in his own
Yeah.
speeches.
Yeah.
The,
Oh my
well,
God.
I'll leave you on this though. What kills me when he does those rambling speeches just full of absolute crap that he's making up on the fly.
Yeah,
People actually pay to go see that.
I know. I know. Dude, this is what why? Because Americans are brainwashed. They're hooked on narrative. They are given over to fantasy. And you see the fantasy at play in middle America and in all across the country. You see the fantasy at play in the markets. You see the fantasy at play in the military, in the economy, in the government, in entertainment. Everything is fantasy. Everything is a narrative. Everything's perception. It's all fake and gay.
It is. And on that note,
And on that note, that was
thanks for
great. It was so much fun hanging out with you,
it
man.
was, it was. Thanks for coming on
My
uh
pleasure.
and you know, when we get back on another couple of weeks, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Trump will provide us with a much more entertaining information to mull
A
over.
lot more to talk about for sure. Absolutely, man. All
By
right,
that
brother. God
time,
bless you, man.
cats and dogs may be laying together, the dead will be walking the streets again. Who the hell knows, man?
Who knows? Who knows?
All
God help
right.
us all. Take care, buddy.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.